Greetings and gratitude. Today's song, I Was Me by Imagine Dragons, is lyrically streamlined but profound. Could I be reading way too much into this song? Perhaps, perhaps not. I don't know what the lyricists intended, but the impact of the song can be whatever we as the audience take it to be. To be clear, though, I am not speaking on behalf of the artists. To listen to the songs directly from the artist's links, see the video description below, and these songs are also included in my July 2025 playlists on YouTube and Spotify. So let's dive in to the lyrical analysis. In one sentence, I would say that the song draws out so many potential interconnected meanings through a just right amount of vagueness in the verses that are contextualized with the refrain and chorus. Admittedly, that was a bit of a long sentence. I will elaborate on that shortly, but first I want to mention there is a lot of repetition with the refrain and the chorus, with very short verses to provide any variation between that. I think this works very well for the song's message. It communicates a sense of pleading in the desire to be some past version of ourselves who we desperately want to be again, which is kind of what the song is about. So, the first verse drives a passage of time. A day builds into a year, and that sequence creates momentum, a sense that this is a moment in motion. At the same time, each is just another, implying a longevity or even mundanity despite the action. This is echoed in those one steps referred to in the lyrics. The next part of that line creates an othering of identity with they say. And who is they? It is whoever they are to you. It can be others, or it can even be other aspects of your own self. This line showcases how well-placed vagueness lets the audience be part of the storytelling. The lyricist doesn't try to take over the narrative here. It still might have been a good song if the lyricist had specified the details, but this decision not to allows the simplicity of the song to mean so much more to so many more people because the audience can add their own subtexts to fill it out. Yet, the structure of the piece remains stable. There is still a clear understanding of the song's broader topic. For the next line about one trip, I see a few different ways to interpret it, and to me they all work really well together. One trip can refer to a trip around the sun, as in 1 year. It can be a trip as in travel, one trip where you put one step at a time in front of another. What's more, though, is that when playing with multiple meanings, you do not necessarily need your sentence to be grammatically or literally accurate to all of the meanings. Sometimes it is enough to trigger the audience to be reminded of a meaning. For example, trip here could be a warning, such as referring to a trip up like a fall, or even evokes tripwire like a trap. When tied to the phrase, and you're back that way, both could mean now that you're back to where you were trying to travel away from, and maybe returning to the same time of year, the same place around the sun. It could feel like you didn't make any forward progress at all, just trapped going in circles because, well, maybe one trip, one fall, and you're back that way. You slid back. Once again, though, there are other layers to the line, and you're back that way. It is a return to a past state of some sort. So while it can be back to just another day, to just another year, or back as in a backslide, it can also more positively be maybe it's back to how you were before this seemingly wearied state. A recovery if you just keep taking one step at a time on this trip, on this journey. Thus, this verse to me is a great example for how a piece of art can meet you where you are. If you are feeling hopeless, this song speaks understanding to the feeling of tired futility. If you feel determined to make things better by just keeping on trying, this song speaks understanding to the feeling of heavy-laden tenacity. If you feel alone, it acknowledges the separation from others. If you need a reminder that you're not alone, it shares a message from others. The song syncs with you and grows with you with every pass through it because of this well-structured vagueness. On to the first appearance of the refrain and chorus. Poetic pairing of the eyes and hands is a go-to for a good reason. Together they cover the spectrum from passive to active, from taking in and giving out, from past to present to future. To not recognize so much is hard. That sense of pleading about believing me makes sense and is appropriately placed with such high stakes that have just been established. Next, the line, "This is not who I am," is, to me, the song's central theme. Regardless of where you're at or who you're talking to, regardless of what you're struggling with or how, the thesis, "This is not who I am," is the presumed common ground for people resonating with this song. This line is a deciphering key to connect with others, because whatever or however it is they are, they also know what it is to not be who one is. It also dictates the structure of the song as a topic anchor to prevent the vagueness from obfuscating the message, because it all boils down to, "This is not who I am." The chorus then pushes our thoughts forward in time again. If, not when, I recover, and the question about being taken back. So we have two emotionally volatile variables here, lacking certainty of oneself and lacking certainty of acceptance. The overt question in this chorus also implies that there has been some kind of, at a minimum, perceived rejection, perhaps due to the thing that needs recovering. This is a very rock bottom, vulnerable experience, but it is not unique with that sense of effort to fit in like everyone else. It's interesting to me that the effort here is in trying to fit in immediately after the hesitation about whether recovery will even happen. So the effort doesn't seem to be necessarily going towards the recovery here, but towards the fitting in. Let's remember that disparity when we get into the next verse. However, the next line of the chorus about the photograph reminders poses another interesting shift. Trying to fit in, but the photographs are reminding me. They're reminding me, not reminding those with whom I'm trying to fit in. There's another disparity here, it seems, because if you're trying to fit in, aren't you trying to convince the people you're trying to fit in with, not trying to remind yourself? This subtle scattering of focus in the subjects of the chorus, you, them, me, is another way the lyrics communicate the disjointed sense of identity, when I does not feel like it is the same as me. I think that it's one of the reasons the line, "I was me," works so well as the title for this song, because while "This is not who I am" could be the thesis, "I was me" could be the hook and the conclusion, our starting point and our ending point of that trip in verse 1, for better or for worse. In verse 2, we get some more action. What are we trying to make right here? What fight are we trying to win? Remember back in the chorus when we started to see that scattering, that disparity. Is it recovery we're trying to make right, that we're fighting for? Is it being taken back? Is it fitting in? Is it going back to how we were? These are not all necessarily the same target. In fact, the success in one of these areas may even be potentially mutually exclusive of success in another. For example, can recovery happen while fitting in? Maybe, maybe not. This encourages the audience to stop and think about what they want. What do you want? Where is all that incredible effort of yours going? Side note, I also want to touch on the reuse of the word right in this song. We see it in the phrases, quote, "fit right in," and in, quote, "make this right." From an editing standpoint, with such a lyrically streamlined song, repeating distinct words with a lot of connotation is usually, not always, but usually going to either be a bit of clumsiness in the wordsmithing, because with such little variation, every word has to count, or intentional artistry in the wordsmithing. Again, I cannot say what the lyricist intended with it. However, I think there is a compelling argument, for the very least, of this having an artistic impact here, because it seems to be so central to what it means to return to that state of "I was me, this is not who I am, what is the right thing here?" Back to the rest of verse 2. The recall of the last two lines from verse 1 reads almost like one would repeat a mantra, one step and one trip. There is also another layer of meaning now as we think about exactly what we're aiming for, though. There is more intent with this trip and these steps, despite the outstanding questions, because these questions we've been presented with in the other verses and chorus give us a direction to think about, even if we don't have the answers yet. It's almost Socratic in a way that the lyrics prompt us to explore what comes to mind when we read or hear them. When the refrain repeats the lack of recognition for one's own eyes and hands, the sense of pleading swells even more. You're trying hard to win that fight, and you still don't recognize these integral parts of self. To not recognize your hands is to not recognize the calluses and the lines and the scars and every other mark you've accumulated from everything you've been doing with them. To not recognize your eyes is to not recognize your viewpoints and vantage points and points of view you've adopted from everything you have seen with them. There is a separation between you and how you're existing in this life. That pleading for others to believe that this isn't who you are feels more desperate because there is a recognition that the outcomes of the actions that you're taking are not telling the whole story of who you are. Actions do not always speak louder than words. I repeat, actions do not and cannot always speak louder than words because our actions don't always work out the way we hope. We cannot control every cascading consequence of our actions. Not every facet of self is heralded by something obviously observed by others. Hence, the chorus repeating the questions of recovery and being taken back speaks to those attempts to turn those efforts into something that connects with the goals and that connects with others in a way that can be observed. The photograph reminders line emphasizes what has failed. Those photographs are exhibit A evidence that something is not right. These repeating refrain and chorus lyrics again are such a great example of how repetition can add to the storytelling. These are the same lines, but their placement with the context of the verses allows them to expand their meaning the second time around. Not every repeated chorus succeeds in this or is meant to achieve that result. A good question lyricists can ask when they want to utilize this repetition technique is, am I providing new information that sheds more light on the old information I'm repeating? The third and last verse changes the format a bit. We see outright requests. I need strength to win this fight that I am trying hard to win. I feel fractured, not whole, because I do not feel like me. It expressly states what has only been implied before, that there is a lack of vitality here. Moreover, if you only recognize yourself in a photograph, you are not recognizing yourself in a presently living version of you, only in a version of you who once lived but no longer does. This is another scattering this time of the timeline of who you are, because every passing moment, every passing step, every trip around the sun widens the gap between when you felt alive to now. It feels like you are missing so many versions of you. It is a hole in your timeline. The lyricist leverages this opportunity for wordplay, where instead of feeling whole, you feel a hole inside. From this hole, which can evoke images of a pit you're trapped in, comes the line that puts the atmosphere of the lyrics into words. Oh, I'm begging you. Then we get straight to the chorus without any refrain, a brilliant editing move in my opinion, because the point has been made that there is no recognition of self. The cards have already been spread on the table in preparation for the big ask, and that big ask is the first line. That direct ask is now whether you'll be taken back. No indirect wondering this time with that question, not with this tone change, not after the begging from the third verse. The concept of that fitting in has also shifted. How can anything feel like it fits in if there is a hole tearing you apart, constantly reminded by the photographs of what's missing? The story ends on a concluding wish. The repetition of that line, if only I could go back where I was me. If only, once again, This line shows how the song sinks and grows with you. Does the if only reflect an inner sense of impossibility? Or does the if only keep you going one more step and another and another? So, overall, the song I Was Me by Imagine Dragons is a lyrically simple song, but with so many layers. Onto the application, the personal application for me. As someone navigating complex chronic illness, there were multiple ways this resonated with my experience. It is surreal when your mind just isn't connecting to the fact that not being healthy is your present reality. Like, in some ways, it's just become another day when I have to plan for recovery time after brushing my teeth. One step at a time so I can recharge from how much brushing my teeth can drain me. In other ways, I still cannot believe that I have to plan recovery time just for brushing my teeth. That's not me. It's just brushing teeth. How can that be me? Needing to recover from that, I don't want that to be me. I'm trying so hard for that not to be me. It is cathartic for this piece of art to basically respond to my own incredulity about this with, yeah, I know, right? Then the chorus gets me very introspective. Yes, there is the question of being taken back by others. This so readily applies to many kinds of external others. Social circles, for example. It can also be applied to doctors. A lot of us with complex chronic illness fall between the cracks of the medical system. We're too far removed from a sense of normalcy in our recovery that we miss out on a lot of appropriate care. For instance, we may have too many issues to address in one appointment. Often you can only bring up 1 to 3 per appointment. But because they are so interconnected, we never get a chance to really solve the whole problem with a single medical practitioner. If we, the patients, can figure out ways to recover by ourselves just enough, will the medical system fold us back in again to dispense the care we so desperately need? At the same time, this chorus feels like me talking to myself. When will I take me back? When will I accept who I am? How much suffering comes from focusing so hard on who used to be, on those photographs of our old selves, that we miss out on all the ways we have developed with each trip around the sun. That's not to say that our struggles were necessarily good or had to happen in order for good things to happen. It is to say that it is an opportunity to take back some agency from time as it tears a gaping hole into me. Chronic illness is not rewarding, but what can I reap from this field since I am here anyway? And since I am more than just this chronic illness, there is more to me to being alive than simply surviving the chronic illnesses. What can I do as a whole human being that is rewarding? I can ask myself, what do I miss about who I was? Why do I miss it? And what are different ways I can achieve that with these current eyes and hands that have matured in many ways the same as anyone else, simply because we're all getting older? I miss how confident I used to be able to be about my future and all my plans for it. One of the reasons I miss it is because I was energized by working towards something so much greater. Perhaps Perhaps these days I still am confident, or even more confident than I used to be about other parts of my life, like how I feel more confident about the value of and potential in a single moment. Perhaps, perhaps I can be energized by working towards moments that can be so much greater. How about you? Where is this song meeting you in your walk through life? Farewell and fulfillment.